Christmas morning, 2023. I was sitting in my kitchen with my coffee, waiting for my son David and his wife Jessica to arrive with my two grandchildren, Emma and Tyler. The doorbell rang at exactly 10:30, just like we'd planned. I opened the door with a smile, ready to hug my grandbabies and start our Christmas tradition. Merry Christmas, Grandma. Emma and Tyler rushed past their parents and wrapped their arms around me. These moments with my grandchildren were everything to me. At 63, after losing my husband 3 years ago, they were my whole world. David hugged me next, and I could smell his cologne, the same one he'd worn since college. "Merry Christmas, Mom," he said, but something felt off in his voice. Jessica stood behind him, holding a single gift bag. "Merry Christmas, Helen," Jessica said with that polite smile she always gave me. Not warm, not genuine, just polite. She handed me the gift bag without making eye contact. I led them into the living room, where I had their presents arranged under my tree. 23 gifts total. I'd counted them twice. For David, I'd bought the golf clubs he'd been eyeing for months. For Jessica, a beautiful cashmere scarf from Nordstrom that cost me 2 weeks of grocery money. For Emma and Tyler, I'd spent hours shopping for the exact toys they'd circled in the catalogues they'd left at my house. The children tore into their presents with the joy only kids can have. David opened his golf clubs and actually smiled for the first time that morning. "Mum, these are incredible. Thank you." Jessica unwrapped the scarf, held it up to the light, and said, "It's lovely, Helen." "Thank you." Then it was my turn. I reached into the gift bag Jessica had handed me and pulled out a small box. Inside was a generic candle from the drugstore. Vanilla scented, still had the $3.99 price tag stuck to the bottom. The kind of candle you grab when you suddenly remember you need a gift for someone. I looked up at Jessica, trying to hide my disappointment, and she said the words that would change everything between us. "We didn't have time to get you a gift this year. We've been so busy with work and the kids' activities. You know how it is." David nodded along, like this was perfectly reasonable. "Yeah, Mum. December was just crazy for us." I sat there holding this $3 candle while looking at the hundreds of dollars worth of gifts I'd carefully chosen for them. But it wasn't about the money. It was about the lie. Because I knew exactly how they'd spent their December. Let me back up and tell you about my relationship with Jessica, because this didn't happen overnight. When David first brought her home 7 years ago, I was thrilled. My son was 32 and had finally found someone who made him happy. Jessica was beautiful, educated, had a good job as a marketing manager. She seemed perfect for him. The problems started small. Jessica would make little comments about my cooking. "Oh, David doesn't eat red meat anymore," when I'd made his favorite pot roast. Or she'd rearrange things when she visited, claiming she was just helping, but really showing me that my way of doing things wasn't good enough. After they got married, it got worse. She'd forget to invite me to family events, then act surprised when I found out about them later. "Oh, Helen, I thought David told you about Emma's school play. We just assumed you were busy." But David never told me, because Jessica never told David to tell me. When my husband Robert died 3 years ago, I thought things might change. I thought she might show some compassion, include me more in their lives. Instead, she seemed to see his death as an opportunity to distance me further from my son and grandchildren. She started making rules about my visits. I couldn't just drop by anymore. I had to call first. I couldn't keep the kids overnight without 2 weeks' notice. I couldn't give them candy or toys without checking with her first. Every interaction became a negotiation, and somehow I always ended up feeling like I was asking for too much. But I put up with it because I loved my grandchildren, and I could see that David was caught in the middle. Jessica was careful never to be outright rude in front of him. She saved her coldness for when we were alone, when she'd make it clear that I was an inconvenience in their lives. The worst part was watching my relationship with David change. We used to talk on the phone twice a week. We used to have lunch together once a month, just the two of us. But gradually, Jessica inserted herself into everything. If David called me, she'd be in the background, reminding him about something they had to do. If we made plans, something would always come up at the last minute. I started keeping track of how often I saw them, and the numbers were depressing. In 2022, after Robert died, I saw my grandchildren maybe once a month. In 2023, it was even less. I was becoming a stranger to the children I'd helped raise, the children who used to beg their parents to bring them to Grandma's house. So when Jessica handed me that drugstore candle and said they didn't have time to get me a gift, I knew she was lying. Because I knew exactly how they'd spent their December. 3 weeks before Christmas, I'd been at the grocery store when I ran into Jessica's mother, Patricia. We'd always gotten along well, and she seemed genuinely happy to see me. "Helen, how wonderful to run into you," she said, giving me a real hug. I was just telling Patricia about the beautiful Christmas party Jessica and David threw last weekend. The house looked absolutely stunning. My heart stopped. Christmas party? Oh yes, didn't you go? They had about 30 people over. Jessica went all out with the decorations and catering. David was telling everyone about the vacation they're planning to Aspen for New Year's. They're so excited about taking the kids skiing for the first time. I stood there in the cereal aisle, trying to keep my face neutral while my world crumbled. They'd thrown a Christmas party and hadn't invited me. They were planning a family vacation and hadn't mentioned it. And now Jessica was telling me they didn't have time to buy me a Christmas gift. "I'm sure it was lovely," I managed to say to Patricia's mother. "I've been so busy lately. Everything's a blur." She patted my arm. "Oh, I know how that is." "Well, tell Jessica I said hello, and that the appetizers she served were incredible. That woman certainly knows how to entertain." When I got home, I sat in my car in the driveway for 20 minutes, trying to process what I'd learned. They had time to plan a party for 30 people. They had time to organize a ski vacation. They had money for catering and decorations and a family trip to Aspen. But they didn't have time or money to get me a Christmas gift. That's when I started paying attention to their social media, something I'd never done before. Jessica's Instagram was full of photos from December. The Christmas party Patricia's mother had mentioned. She'd documented every detail. Professional photos of the decorated house, gourmet food displays, David in a new sweater I'd never seen, the kids in matching Christmas outfits. There were posts about shopping trips to the mall with the kids, about date nights at expensive restaurants, about weekend getaways to the mountains. Jessica had posted about the perfect Christmas gifts she'd found for everyone, showing beautifully wrapped presents under their tree. Everyone except me, apparently. The final piece came when I was looking at David's Facebook page. He'd shared a photo from the party with the caption, "So grateful for all the family and friends who make our holidays special." In the background of one photo, I could see a pile of gift bags on their kitchen counter, clearly party favors for their guests. They'd spent money on gift bags for 30 party guests, but they couldn't spend more than $4 on a gift for David's mother. As I sat in my living room that Christmas morning, holding that drugstore candle, all of this was running through my mind. The lies, the exclusion, the casual cruelty of telling me they didn't have time when I knew exactly how they'd spent their time. That's when I made my decision. I looked at Jessica and smiled the same polite smile she always gave me. "Of course, dear. I completely understand. December is such a busy time." David relaxed, probably relieved that I wasn't making a scene. Jessica nodded. already distracted by Tyler trying to get her attention about his new toy. I excused myself to the kitchen, saying I needed to check on the Christmas ham I'd been cooking since 6 that morning. But really, I needed a moment to think about what I was going to do. In my kitchen, I opened the junk drawer where I keep random items, and there it was, the spare key to David and Jessica's house. They'd given it to me 2 years ago when they went on vacation and I'd watered their plants. I'd forgotten to give it back, and they'd never asked for it. I made my decision right there, standing in my kitchen while my family laughed in the next room. I served Christmas dinner like nothing had happened. Jessica complimented the ham, David asked for seconds of my stuffing, and the kids told me about their school Christmas programs that, of course, I hadn't been invited to attend. After dinner, they started gathering their things to leave. "We need to get going," Jessica said. "We're having dinner with my parents tonight, and then we have an early morning tomorrow." The Aspen trip, I realized. They were leaving for their family ski vacation the next day, the one they'd never mentioned to me. I hugged the kids goodbye, told David I loved him, and thanked Jessica for the candle. "It smells wonderful," I said, though I'd never planned to light it. After they left, I sat in my living room and made a list. A mental inventory of everything David, Jessica, and the kids had left at my house over the years. And there was a lot. David's old college sweatshirts that he wore when he came over to help with yard work. Jessica's good jacket that she'd left after a barbecue last summer. Emma's art supplies that she kept here for when she visited. Tyler's collection of toy cars that he'd accumulated over years of staying overnight. Books, clothes, phone chargers, hair ties. Emma's stuffed elephant that she couldn't sleep without when she stayed over. They'd used my house like a storage unit, leaving their things here because it was convenient, because Grandma's house was always available, always accommodating. But if they didn't have time for me, if I wasn't worth more than a $3 drugstore candle, then maybe they didn't need to keep their things at my house anymore. The next morning, December 26th, while they were on their way to Aspen, I drove to their house with 5 large boxes in my car. I let myself in with their spare key and stood in their foyer for a moment. The house still smelled like the expensive candles Jessica had bought for their Christmas party. Not drugstore vanilla, but something sophisticated from Williams-Sonoma. I wasn't there to snoop or cause damage. I had a job to do. I started in David's old room, which Jessica had turned into her home office. In the closet were 3 of David's college sweatshirts, his old baseball glove, and a box of his high school trophies that he'd never taken when he moved out. I packed them carefully into the first box. In the guest room where I used to stay when I babysat overnight, I found Jessica's wool coat hanging in the closet, the one she'd left after our 4th of July barbecue and never asked about. It was expensive. I could tell by the label. Into the box it went. The kids' playroom was where I found most of the items. Emma's art box with all her special coloured pencils and markers that she'd insisted on keeping at Grandma's house because they're safer there. Tyler's extensive collection of Hot Wheels cars, organised in the special carrying case I'd bought him. Both kids had bags of books here, stories we'd read together during sleepovers and quiet afternoons. In Emma's room, I found Mr. Whiskers, her stuffed elephant. This was the hardest item to pack. Emma had gotten Mr. Whiskers for her 3rd birthday, and whenever she stayed overnight, she couldn't sleep without him. She'd cry and carry on until someone drove back to get him if they forgot to bring him. I held Mr. Whiskers for a moment, thinking about all the nights Emma had slept in my guest room, clutching this elephant, trusting that Grandma would keep him safe. But if I wasn't important enough to include in their lives, if I wasn't worth more than a last-minute drugstore gift, then maybe I wasn't the right person to keep Mr. Whiskers safe anymore. Into the box he went. I found phone chargers in my kitchen drawer, 3 different kinds for their various devices. Jessica's good sunglasses were on my bathroom counter from some visit months ago. David's reading glasses were on my coffee table. A bottle of Tyler's allergy medication was in my medicine cabinet from when he'd had a reaction during a sleepover. Everything went into the boxes. Every trace of their presence in my house. Every sign that they'd ever treated my home like an extension of their own. The hardest part was Emma's paintings. She'd made me dozens of pictures over the years. Finger paintings from when she was little, watercolors from her art class, crayon drawings of our family. I had them displayed all over my refrigerator and bulletin board. But if they didn't have time for me, if I wasn't worth investing in, then maybe I wasn't the right audience for Emma's artwork either. I took down every single picture and put them in the box with her art supplies. By the time I was done, I had 5 boxes packed with their belongings. Nothing valuable enough that they'd panic about losing it, but everything that made my house feel like their second home. I loaded the boxes into my car and drove back to their house. I arranged them neatly on their front porch, just like a delivery. Then I wrote a simple note. David and Jessica, found all these items you'd left at my house over the years. Since you're so busy and don't have time for extras, I thought I'd return everything to save you the trouble of keeping track of things in 2 places. Hope you had a wonderful Christmas. Mom. I taped the note to the top box and drove home. They came back from Aspen on January 2nd. I know because David called me that evening, and I could hear the controlled panic in his voice. Mum, what's this about the boxes on our porch? Oh, did you get them? Good. I was cleaning house and found all those things you'd left over the years. I thought you might want them back. Mum, you took Mr. Whiskers. Emma's been crying for 3 days because she couldn't find him at your house when we got back. This was the part I'd been dreading, but I'd made my decision. Well, now she has him at her own house where he belongs. No more worrying about forgetting him when you visit. And you took her art supplies. She wants to paint something for you, and all her good markers are gone. She can paint at her own house now. I'm sure you can find her new art supplies. There was a long silence. Then David said, Mum, what's this really about? I could have told him about the Christmas party I wasn't invited to. I could have mentioned the Aspen vacation they never told me about. I could have explained how it felt to receive a $3 candle after spending hundreds on their gifts. But what would be the point? David had stood right there and nodded when Jessica said they didn't have time for me. It's not about anything, David. I'm just simplifying my life. I'm 63 years old, and I don't need to keep track of everyone else's belongings anymore. But, Mum, you know Emma can't sleep without Mr. Whiskers when she stays over. Then I guess she'll sleep better in her own bed. Another silence. Then David said, Are you saying you don't want the kids to sleep over anymore? This was the question I'd been expecting, the one I'd been practicing my answer to. I'm saying that sleepovers require planning and coordination, and it seems like you don't have time for that kind of planning. It's easier for everyone if the kids stay in their own beds. Mum, you're being ridiculous. Over a Christmas gift. This isn't about a gift, David. This is about priorities. And clearly, I'm not one of yours. He tried to argue, but I could hear Jessica in the background telling him something, probably reminding him about their dinner reservation or their early morning plans. Look, Mom, we'll talk about this later. I need to help Jessica get the kids settled in. Of course you do. Give them my love. I hung up and realized I wasn't sad. I was relieved. Jessica called me 3 days later. This was unprecedented. She'd never called me directly in 7 years of knowing me. Helen, I think there's been a misunderstanding about Christmas. Has there? The candle, I know it wasn't much, but we really were busy, and I thought you'd understand. You know how crazy the holidays get. I let her talk. She explained about their work schedules, the kids' activities, all the obligations they'd had. She never mentioned the Christmas party or the Aspen trip, of course. Jessica, it's fine. Really. I understand completely. So you'll give the kids their things back? Emma's really upset about Mr. Whiskers. Emma can visit Mr. Whiskers anytime she wants, at your house. But what about when she stays overnight at your place? I think we should take a break from overnights for a while. You're all so busy, and I don't want to add to your stress. I could hear the calculation in her silence. She was trying to figure out if this was a threat or a genuine offer to reduce her obligations. Helen, if this is about the gift, I can get you something else. Something nicer. It was never about the gift, Jessica. It was about honesty. I don't understand. I know you don't. And that's okay. She tried to keep talking, but I told her I had to go. I had a dentist appointment, which was true, but mostly I just didn't want to hear her try to explain away months of exclusion and dismissal. The next few weeks were quiet. David texted me occasionally, but our phone calls stopped. Emma called me once, crying about Mr. Whiskers, and it broke my heart. But I reminded myself that her parents could drive her to my house any time if seeing her grandmother and her stuffed elephant was really a priority. They never did. February came and went without a visit. March brought Emma's birthday, which I'd celebrated with her every year since she was born. I sent a card with a gift card inside. Safe, distant, nothing that required coordination or planning. David called to thank me for the gift card. Emma loved it, he said, but his voice was stiff. I'm glad. Tell her I said happy birthday. Mom, don't you want to see her? It's her birthday. Of course I want to see her, but you know how busy you all are. He sighed. This is getting ridiculous. Over a Christmas gift. David, it was never about the gift. Then what was it about? I thought about how to explain it to him. How do you tell your adult son that his wife has been systematically excluding you from their lives? How do you explain that you know about the Christmas party and the ski vacation and all the lies? It was about feeling like a stranger in my own family. You're not a stranger, Mom. You're being dramatic. Am I? When's the last time you called me just to talk? When's the last time you visited without needing something from me? When's the last time I was invited to anything you do as a family? He couldn't answer because he knew I was right. I love you, David. I love Emma and Tyler more than my own life, but I'm tired of begging for scraps of your attention. I'm tired of being treated like an obligation instead of a person you actually want to spend time with. That's not how we treat you. Isn't it? The conversation ended without resolution, just like all our conversations did now. Spring arrived, and I started to build a new life. Without the constant hope and disappointment of waiting for David's family to include me, I had energy for other things. I joined a book club at the library. I started volunteering at the animal shelter. I reconnected with friends I'd neglected while I was focused on being the perfect grandmother and mother-in-law. My neighbour, Margaret, whose own children lived across the country, became a closer friend. We started having coffee together twice a week, and I realised I'd forgotten what it felt like to have someone genuinely interested in my thoughts and experiences. You seem different, Margaret said one afternoon in April. Lighter. She was right. The constant anxiety about whether I was doing enough, giving enough, being enough for David's family had lifted. I wasn't walking on eggshells anymore, wasn't second-guessing every interaction with Jessica, wasn't desperately trying to maintain a relationship with grandchildren whose parents saw me as a burden. I still missed Emma and Tyler desperately. I thought about them every day, wondered what they were learning in school, whether Emma was still taking art classes, whether Tyler had lost any more teeth. But I stopped torturing myself with social media, stopped trying to piece together their lives from Facebook posts and Instagram stories. In May, David called to tell me they were planning a summer vacation to the beach house his company rented every year. "We'll be gone for 2 weeks in July," he said. "I thought you might want to know." "That sounds wonderful. I hope you have a great time. You could come visit while we're gone. Water the plants, check on the house." I almost laughed. Even now, the only way he could think to include me was as free labor. "I'm sure you can ask a neighbor to check on things. I'll be busy in July anyway." "Busy with what?" "Living my life, David." That was the last time we spoke for months. Emma's first day of second grade was in September. I knew because I still remembered the important dates, even if I wasn't part of them anymore. I thought about her getting dressed in a new outfit, nervous and excited about her new teacher. I sent her a card with stickers inside. She'd always loved stickers. No return address, just, "Good luck in second grade. Love, Grandma." 2 days later, Jessica called me. She sounded different, less controlled, more frustrated. "Helen, Emma got your card. I hope she liked the stickers. She cried for an hour, asking why Grandma doesn't come see her anymore. She wants to know if you don't love her." This was the knife I'd been expecting, the one that would hurt the most. "What did you tell her?" I didn't know what to tell her. She's 7 years old. She doesn't understand why her grandmother suddenly disappeared from her life. "I didn't disappear, Jessica. I'm right here in the same house I've lived in for 15 years, the same phone number you've had for 7 years. You know what I mean." "Do I?" "Because it seems to me like you wanted me to disappear. You got exactly what you wanted. A family life without the inconvenience of David's mother." For the first time in 7 years, Jessica was speechless. "You want to know what to tell Emma?" I continued. "Tell her that relationships require effort from both sides. Tell her that Grandma got tired of being the only one making that effort. Tell her that when people show you that you don't matter to them, it's okay to believe them." "You're talking about a 7-year-old child." "I'm talking about her parents." Jessica's voice got sharp, the way it did when she was cornered. "David loves you. The kids love you. You're choosing to punish everyone because of a misunderstanding about Christmas." "There was no misunderstanding, Jessica. You made it very clear where I stand in your priorities. You threw a party for 30 people and didn't invite me. You planned a family vacation and didn't mention it. You spent more money on party favors for strangers than you did on a gift for your husband's mother. That wasn't a mistake or an oversight. That was a choice." "How did you—" She stopped herself, but it was too late. "How did I know about the party? About Aspen? I have eyes and ears, Jessica. I know you've been pushing me out of your lives for years, and I finally decided to stop fighting you on it." "That's not what I was doing." "Isn't it? When's the last time you called me just to talk? When's the last time you asked about my life, my health, my interests? When's the last time you included me in a decision about the kids?" She couldn't answer, because we both knew the truth. "I made it easy for you," I said. "You wanted me gone, and now I'm gone. You should be happy." "The kids aren't happy. David isn't happy." "But are you happy, Jessica?" The silence stretched so long, I thought she'd hung up. Finally, she said, "I never wanted the kids to lose their grandmother." "Then you shouldn't have made their grandmother feel unwelcome in their lives." It's been almost a year now since that Christmas morning. Emma is finishing second grade, and Tyler is in kindergarten. David got a promotion at work. Jessica redecorated their living room. I saw it on her Instagram before I stopped following her accounts. I've built a good life without them. The book club led to a writing group, where I'm working on a memoir about being a widow. The animal shelter work led to fostering an elderly dog named Sam, who's become my constant companion. Margaret and I took a cruise to Alaska last month, something I never would have done when I was always available to babysit at a moment's notice. I think about Emma and Tyler every day. I wonder if Emma still loves art, if Tyler still collects rocks like he did when he was 4. I wonder if they ask about me, if they understand why Grandma isn't part of their lives anymore. But I don't regret my decision. That Christmas morning, when Jessica handed me that drugstore candle and lied to my face about not having time, she was telling me exactly how much I mattered to their family. I chose to believe her. I spent years trying to earn a place in their lives, bending over backward to accommodate their schedules, their rules, their preferences. I made myself smaller and smaller, hoping that if I didn't ask for too much, if I didn't inconvenience them, they'd let me stay. But relationships aren't charity cases. Love isn't something you should have to beg for from your own family. The boxes I packed that December morning weren't about revenge or punishment. They were about accepting reality. If I wasn't worth their time, then they didn't need to clutter my house with their belongings. If I wasn't worth including in their lives, then they didn't need me to provide free storage and babysitting services. Sometimes I imagine Emma as a teenager, asking her parents about the grandmother she barely remembers. I wonder what they'll tell her. Will they explain that Grandma got upset about a Christmas gift? Will they mention that they excluded me from family events and vacations? Will they take any responsibility for the way they treated me? Probably not. It's easier to paint me as the unreasonable one, the grandmother who disappeared over a petty disagreement. It's harder to admit that they took me for granted until I stopped being available to be taken. But I know the truth. I know that I gave them every opportunity to treat me like family instead of like a convenience. I know that I asked for very little, just to be included, just to be considered, just to be treated with basic respect and honesty. When they couldn't give me even that much, I gave them the greatest gift I could. I freed them from the obligation of pretending to care about me, and in the process, I freed myself from the exhausting work of trying to matter to people who had already decided I didn't. That $3 candle is still in my drawer, still in its box. Sometimes I look at it and remember the woman I was that Christmas morning, hopeful, accommodating, willing to accept scraps. I don't light the candle, but I keep it as a reminder of the moment I decided I deserved better. I deserved a family who wanted me around, not just when they needed something. I deserved honesty instead of convenient lies. I deserved to be included in the lives of people I loved, not pushed to the margins when I became inconvenient. I'm 64 years old now, and I've learned that it's never too late to stop accepting less than you deserve. It's never too late to choose your own peace over other people's comfort. It's never too late to believe that you matter, even when the people who should love you most seem to have forgotten. The gift Jessica gave me that Christmas wasn't the drugstore candle. It was the clarity to see that I'd been settling for far too little for far too long. And the gift I gave myself when I packed those boxes wasn't revenge. It was freedom.